Happy New Year. Welcome to January's AOT Learning Network webinar, the first of 2026. We are thrilled to have such a good turnout today, and I just want to share briefly, because some of you might be new to our offerings, I want to introduce the AOT Learning Network, and do a shout out to my implementation team colleagues on the call. So I'm Brooke. I am manager of AOT implementation on our team. And if this is your first time joining a webinar, welcome. The AOT Learning Network, which is what this event is possible through, is a close to 3,000 strong virtual learning network, made up of all sorts of collaborators nationwide, dedicated to the advancement of and education about assisted outpatient treatment, for people with SMI who struggle to maintain voluntary engagement in treatment services. And so, in addition to sharing resources and other AOT related highlights, we hold these webinars and then web chats for AOT program staff and judges. And so, if you were forwarded this webinar and you did not register from an AOT Learning Network email directly in your inbox, we would definitely encourage you to join the network for more events like this one. All of the offerings are totally free, and I will drop the link to join in the chat shortly. And then I just want to do a little shout out to Sarah and Jared, who are also on tax implementation team on your screen here. And without further ado, I am honored to introduce today's presenter, Jack Yatsko. Jack serves as Chief Operating Officer at Clubhouse International and has been with the organization for 23 years. He previously worked at the very first Clubhouse in Hawaii for 13 years, and his overall career and mental health spans 40 years. So we are really lucky to have him with us today. And in his work, Jack works closely with Clubhouse International's training centers, in the quality assurance process of accreditation. He helps develop new clubhouses and provides technical assistance to existing clubhouses and groups seeking to learn more about the model. And Jack holds a master's degree in social work from the University of Hawaii. So one quick kind of housekeeping note before we begin, and I'm sorry to those of you that this is repetitive for. So this webinar is being recorded and it's going to be posted to TAC's YouTube channel sometime next week. And then as attendees, you are camera and microphone off automatically, but you're welcome and encouraged to submit any questions you might have via the chat or the Q&A throughout the webinar, and then we will have a question and answer session at the end. So enough of me rambling on announcements, and with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Jack.
Thank you, Brooke, and Jared and Sarah. And again, Happy New Year. I wasn't sure, Brooke, if the statute of limitations on saying Happy New Year had run out, given I don't know what that time frame is, but I'm very excited to meet with you today. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm basically going to cover three things with you today, and hopefully we'll have plenty of time for your questions and dialogue about the Clubhouse model of psychiatric rehabilitation. As Brooke outlined, I've been in this worked in the Clubhouse field now for 37 years, 13 at a Clubhouse, the very first one here in Hawaii, and then going on 24 years now at Clubhouse International. And one thing that I want to say at the beginning, I'll say it here at the beginning and at the end, because I think it's really impactful, and I want you to use it as a takeaway. I've been to over 200 Clubhouse programs around the globe, and I frequently meet members. These are the people who come to the program aren't referred to as clients or patients, but members. And I almost always hear the same thing from them. And what I hear from members is my Clubhouse not only changed my life, it saved my life. And we take those words very seriously in our day-to-day work, of which I'll explain. About the three things I want to cover today are what a clubhouse is and how it operates, what our role and function is at Clubhouse International, and then a few slides about how to start a clubhouse, and then open it up for your questions and dialogue. Again, those words that I hear from members saying that resonate in every interaction that we have at Clubhouse International with fielding questions about clubhouses, with running the work that we do. And so with that, I'll dive right into it with sharing my screen, and hopefully it will work.
Looks great.
Okay, cool. We're good to go. So this is called the Clubhouse Model: Recovery Through Work, School, Housing, and Friendships. And this is a photo of Austin Clubhouse in Austin, Texas, if anybody is on the call from that great city. And so, more than a program, a clubhouse is a community of people committed to each other's success. It's people working together, and it's a place. It's a place where people come to a building where there are repeated daily opportunities to volunteer, to get involved in the work of the clubhouse, and develop friendships. As you folks know, so many of our folks are socially isolated, marginalized, often discriminated against because of their mental illness, and a clubhouse is a safe, dignified environment to come out of that isolation. There's multiple opportunities at a clubhouse to participate in important work, to get help with employment goals, education goals, develop healthy lifestyles, and receive help to access needed health care and social services. And this is a photo of a clubhouse Fountainhuset at Mortenstrud in Norway. They do a podcast, and this is a photo of their setup in their clubhouse where they do a weekly podcast. So our therapeutic milieu, if you will, we don't run like classes during the day like some PSR programs do, but we follow what we call a work order day. And so these are daily activities that are organized that are work of the clubhouse. So the work order day typically parallels business work hours, 8 to 4, 9 to 5, and members and staff work side by side to do the work. We use the term member more than patient or client because we want people who come to a clubhouse to feel like they're a part of a community. Like, say you're a Rotary Club member, or you're a local member at the Y, or a member of a church synagogue, or a senior center. That sense of community, a feeling like this is my place, and these are my friends, and this is a place of support for me. That's how we want people to feel when they come in and join as a member of a clubhouse. And people volunteer to do what as much or as little work as they feel ready to do. These are a couple photos of Phoenix Clubhouse in Hong Kong. Those folks are making the daily lunch, and then these folks are in their what we call a work unit, and their meeting designed around their newsletter. And this is Clubhouse Hapataki in Tokyo. So around this work order day, these are some examples of work unit activities. We use a whiteboard or a drop down with an LCD projector. Some clubhouses are fancier that way, but they list all the activities that members and staff will run work unit meetings, and people sign up to help for whatever the work of the clubhouse is. And so, greeting members, answering phones, tracking attendance. Making lunch, doing the shopping, doing the inventory. A lot of clubhouses will set up a restaurant style because so many of our folks are in SSI, SSD. They don't go out to eat too much because of their limited income. So creating an environment where folks are waiting on you. It's a way to build relationships, get to know people you don't know, and running your food service operation in that manner is how a lot of clubhouses serve their breakfasts and lunches. A lot of clubhouses produce a newsletter. They have a web page. They have social media. I mentioned the video media labs that folks do. Some clubhouses do a daily TV show. Having that kind of technology is really helpful, especially for younger adults, to engage folks in some of the work of the clubhouse. Many clubhouses do community presentations. There's a bullet point here about a speakers bureau. We don't want to be the best kept secret in mental health. And we want people and our neighbors to know who we are. So going out to schools and chambers of commerce, Kiwanis clubs, Rotary clubs, not just the mental health providers, but other people out in the larger community. We want them to know who we are and what we do. Clubhouses may have a garden. They may be raising their own food to help with their meals. Some clubhouses run a bank, and mobile reach out is another area where we don't just make cards and do phone calls to reach out to folks who are isolating at home or sick or whatever. A lot of clubhouses will bake muffins in the morning and say, "Oh, Sarah and Jared aren't here today. They're usually here today. Let's get in the van and take some of these muffins and a newsletter and swing by their places and check in on them and see how they're doing." And so it's again sort of fostering that family-like atmosphere where we care about folks and want to know how they're doing. Doing the maintenance of the clubhouse. Clubhouses don't contract that out. We're responsible for cleaning up our own mess. And so clubhouse members and staff do that work together. It's a very egalitarian structure at a clubhouse where members and staff work side by side to carry out the work. And in doing so, members build their confidence, talent, skills, and abilities. Just want to go up for a second here. Okay, I skipped a slide here when I was fuddling about with my keyboard here. Um, I I knew I missed one, but about a clubhouse being a place where people participate in their own recovery process. Clubhouses offer people hope and opportunities. We're a program that complements available psychiatric treatments. So we're good partners with psychiatrists, case managers, therapists. We tend to be the eyes and ears out there because folks are coming to us 2, 3, 5 days a week. So we want to be able, so many of our members are kind of afraid to speak up if a medication isn't working that well, but they'll say that to us. So we'll accompany folks to their psychiatric appointments if they would like us to do so to help be advocates. This photo of Thunderbird Clubhouse in Oklahoma, when I was talking about the sort of the egalitarian structure and how the space is shared, in this photo, you see that table, it's kind of in the middle of the room. So rather than walking in a room and a table being up against a wall, clubhouses, in particular this clubhouse, is very intentional about having drop-down outlets in the middle of the room. So when you walk into the room, you see the folks around the computers. This is their clerical office unit area. But you're not walking into a room and seeing the backs of people. You're seeing their faces and they're greeting you as you walk into the room. And so that intentionality is something that doesn't sound like a big deal, but it is in the sense that we work with a lot of people who are shy and aren't comfortable with just joining right in. But this helps accentuate that connectivity and help build relationships. The employment programs. Here's a statistic I want to make sure that you're aware of that in 40% of the average daily attendance of members attending accredited clubhouses is in a paid job in the community. Not a sheltered workshop, not a volunteer position, although we help people get volunteer positions, but paid work in places of businesses in the community. They're expected to do the same level of work as other employees, but they're in the mainstream business community. And we do this through a three-tiered sophisticated employment system. Our entry-level kind of employment is called transitional employment. We also offer supported and independent employment. But all these jobs are at the employer's place of business. They're not at the clubhouse, and the wages are the same as anybody else gets paid who's doing a similar job. Many people who are thinking about going to work are often worried if I work, I'll lose my benefits. And clubhouses get really informed and educated on what federal incentive programs are out there. So there's things called PASS plans, Plan for Achieving Self-Sufficiency, or another acronym, IRWES, Impairment Related Work Expenses. I haven't been doing this in the direct service for a long time, but I remember them, and I used to do a lot of these with helping our members with a past plan, for example, is if you're on SSI and you have a particular vocational goal, like say saving money for a car, you can write up this plan and work with the Social Security office, and if they approve it, you can set aside a certain amount of your SSI towards your goal of saving for a car, say $75 a month, and they'll allow you to retain more of your SSI. And so we get really good at knowing all that stuff. So when family members are concerned that my son, I need his check to help pay the rent, or a care home operator. We work with people on this, and we don't just work with people on getting part-time jobs, but also full-time jobs. It gets frustrating sometimes when you hear, well, we only want this person to work 10 hours a week because we don't want them to mess up their benefits. Well, our approach is, why aren't we helping people with full-on career goals, both with their education, with helping them get degrees, and also if they want to go into the deep end of the pool, so to speak, with working full time, that we should be helping them do that. It's a pretty long period of time. It's a 60-month period or a 5-year period. If you totally go off, I'll use Brooke as an example. Say Brooke felt like she worked a couple part-time jobs, is ready to go work full-time and is going to go off of her benefits, is going to get health benefits from her employer. And 6 months into her job, her life blows up. She ends up going in the hospital and has to quit her job. Within that 60-month period, you can reapply to get on your benefits without having to go through the rigmarole of an entire reapplication process. So I just share that with you so to give you a little bit of info of how clubhouses do get to know all those sorts of things when they're helping people with mental illness return to work. I also want to say that predominantly the people that we serve, our standards say we serve anybody with a mental illness, but I know statistically because we collect this demographic data from our clubhouses that the four major diagnoses that we see of members coming to the clubhouse are schizophrenia, schizoaffective, major depression, and bipolar disorder. So that 40% that I mentioned earlier of the average daily attendance going to jobs in the community is primarily people with those kinds of mental illnesses, which by and large are considered the more serious and persistent mental illnesses. They're not people with just say generalized anxiety disorders, but a lot of those illnesses that people consider pretty serious. Education, many of our members, the illness strikes in their late teens, early 20s, dropping out of school, dropping out of college, and I have so many conversations with parents that say my son's in our basement playing video games. He's lost his meaning and purpose in life. He started off as a freshman in college, thought he was doing good, but then started to hear voices, started to have delusions, and boom, he's on SSI now, and he doesn't have any hope for a real life right now. We heard about this clubhouse model. How do we do that? How do we get one started? I'll talk to you more in detail later on in my presentation about some concrete steps to do that. But helping people go back to school, whether it's getting their GED or enroll in a course at college or into a full year, 4-year degree program. Our members really range quite a bit. It's sort of sometimes I hear, oh, you guys only serve high functioning people. It's like, no. And then we hear you guys only serve the low functioning people. And we would say to any provider, don't you make that determination. Let the person come for a tour themselves at a clubhouse and make that assessment themselves, whether they feel the clubhouse is a cool place they feel comfortable going to without making that determination for them. The clubhouse is open to anybody, and we have people who've had 20, 30 psychiatric hospitalizations, and we have people who haven't had any, but have had something dramatic and traumatic happen in their life where they're falling off their career path and they need kind of a confidence booster and sort of a place to go to sort of build themselves back up before they re-enter society through school or work. But we make good relationships with disability counselors at universities, and we help make that bridge. It isn't often completing a course that is a difficult thing for our members, but it's the ancillary things like taking 3 buses to get to the school, filling out a big wad of papers for the application or financial aid. Those tend to be larger barriers. And so clubhouses, they use the talent skills of their members to help tutor members, but we make those liaisonships in our community to help make a pathway for people to return to school. I remember I live on Kauai, and we have a community college, and one of our members, when I was working at a clubhouse, felt very paranoid that people were talking about her, and she couldn't get past it. It was hard for her to concentrate on the class. And given we have like a big tourist economy, it isn't uncommon for somebody to bring a family member, somebody visiting to a class. Professors are don't. They're generally cool about that. So I asked this professor if I could just come to the class to observe the surroundings. And she was fine about that. So I just came in one day and Laura was the name of the member and she said, "Oh, this is my friend Jack. He's visiting." And I just sat there. And what I saw was that Laura sat in the front of the class. And when we got done with it, like I could tell she was, looking around and was distracted. And what we talked about afterwards was simply like her taking control more of her environment by sitting in the back of the class than the front of the class, where she could observe her surroundings rather than feel like sitting in the front of the class and feeling like people behind her are saying things about her. It was simply an environmental kind of a thing that we talked about doing, and that reducing that helped in reduce that barrier of her focusing on the content of the course. So just one example of how we help folks out in that regard. Community support. So as part of the work order day, this will be up on the whiteboard. Does anybody have a doctor's appointment? Does anybody need to be grocery shopping? Help with a housing application? Those sorts of community supports happen every day in a clubhouse. And so members are given access for helping to get to see a doctor. We take for granted sometimes seeing a GP for an annual physical. Well, helping members get those too. Helping members get access for dental support. In many places, Medicaid doesn't cover preventive dental care. Dental care for a lot of our folks is getting your tooth pulled. So a lot of clubhouses will develop a fund and a relationship with a local dentist to help members get access to dental care. We help members with housing. We have a standard in our overall international standards for clubhouse programs that says that the clubhouse doesn't have to have its own housing program, but they do have to help members obtain dignified and affordable housing. When we talk about school and work, if you can't get a decent night's sleep, those things become further and further impossible to reach if you don't have a good, if you can't get a shower and a decent place to sleep. So we work closely with local providers. If the clubhouse isn't running its own housing program, they develop relationships with local providers in their respective communities. And all this work is coordinated between the members and staff of the clubhouse. It isn't just the staff who do this, but a member who's completed recently a HUD application is more likely to be able to help another member than a staff who's never filled out that application. Here's a couple photos. Stepping Stone is one of our international training centers located in Brisbane, Australia, and Yahara House is in Madison, Wisconsin. The even weekend holiday program. So we say in Clubhouse, we work hard and we play hard. So the work order day is sort of our milieu, what we do during the week, but clubhouses are open typically 1 or 2 Saturdays a month, maybe one evening a week till maybe 8 p.m., but also open on Christmas and open on Thanksgiving and the major holidays. You guys know that those are often such an isolating time, and that there's a reason why emergency rooms are pretty packed around those times, because people are reminded if they don't have someone in their life or have a community, those can be really rough periods. And so, Clubhouse, in a clinical vernacular, I would say that the evening weekend holiday program is a wraparound service because mental illness doesn't end at 5 p.m. on Friday and start at 9 a.m. on Monday. And so having a hike schedule or going to the movies on the weekends or having turkey and football and everything else that people do on Thanksgiving is something that clubhouses do together. They plan those events together and they do them outside of the work order day. I At the clubhouse that I worked at, I lived really close to the clubhouse, and we always needed extra oven space. So for 13 years in a row where I worked there, I made an extra turkey and brought it down there. And members' families also came to those events. This is Vincent House in Pinellas Park doing a karaoke thing, and the Makaha Clubhouse is located on Oahu, and you can see they're going bowling. So clubhouses address the social determinants of health. It's connectedness, a feeling of a sense of belonging. It's access to social services. We help with housing, education, employment. We promote having healthy meals. A lot of clubhouses have Fitbits. They may have discount memberships to local gyms. People with mental illness, you guys know these statistics. People with mental illness, the mortality rate is 20 years sooner for people with a mental illness than don't have a mental illness. If there was any other disease, that would be front page headline news. But because it's mental illness, it doesn't get the cachet. And so we need and we do a lot to help people get access to needed health care and medications that medications are getting better and better with less side effects. And so being proactive in that area is something that clubhouses do and just making friends and having a place where you feel I'm needed, wanted, and valued, and I have a contribution to make. So that's a little bit about the clubhouse model. And itself. They're places that people go to during the day. The clubhouse itself is not a residential program, but a place where folks gather during the day. Clubhouse International is the coordinating center. And I'll show you a slide of how many clubhouses we have. We have them in 32 countries now. And our vision is a world where people with mental illness recover and are an integral part of society. Our mission or our way that we do that is ending social and economic isolation for people with mental illness by growing the number and quality of clubhouse programs worldwide. And here's CVAC Clubhouse, which is located in Calcutta, India, Rami Clubhouse in Kazakhstan, De Waterheuvel, which is in the Netherlands and Amsterdam, and Mosaic Clubhouse is in London. So what do we do as the coordinating center? Well, the clubhouse model is comprised, the standards are 37 standards, and we're responsible for the upkeep of those. Every 2 years, we update them. They're not the Ten Commandments, etched in stone, never get changed. They get updated with new standards, revisions to older standards. So every one of our clubhouse, we have a big process where clubhouses have input, and we review that, and we have a big system on updating our standards. We also coordinate training. We have 12 authorized training centers around the globe. I'll show you a slide where they're located. We also assist with expansion. We run a new clubhouse development training that helps new groups get started. And typically, we get contacted a lot by NAMI groups. And it's that desperate mom or dad looking for something for their loved one. And so it isn't usually a mental health center that has a budget and ready to go. It's grassroots. And that's where we get started and help with, we have a 2-day training designed to help with the infrastructure piece of getting it off the ground. We provide a lot of technical support for our existing clubhouses. We get probably 50 to 75 emails a day just on general operational questions. And I have sort of an internal policy of responding to every one of those within a 48-hour period, even if the answers we don't know. You'll find in our work, there's a lot of humility, but there's also a lot of uh, internal support. So whereas a clubhouse feels like a family to its members, so too is the larger international community. People are more than willing to help in a variety of areas. And so just about a week ago, somebody was asking me they're in a rural area and they're writing a grant for a van. And guy says, do you have any copies of grants? And I said, I'll email you 2 of them. And here's the directors of those clubhouses. So feel free to reach out to them for any cherry picking you want to do on the languaging of that. So it's help like that that we try to provide a lot of pragmatic supports to our existing clubhouses. We also organize conferences and seminars and webinars to help clubhouses stay abreast of not just the fundamental practices, but cutting edge practices going on in our work. We participate in advocacy on a variety of levels. Probably at the larger levels, at the global level of trying to advance our model across the globe. We feel like clubhouses should be in every town and community, just like you have boys and girls clubs or senior citizen centers. Every community has people with mental illness, but not every community has a clubhouse. So we work with governments in advocating for clubhouses, but we also in the USA we've worked with SAMHSA, Medicaid departments, things of that nature to open up more funding opportunities for clubhouses. We also run into NIMBY, the not in my backyard stuff, where this happened in El Dorado, California, a couple of years ago, where they were in a strip mall and the landlord was willing to lease them a building and open up their clubhouse, but there was a gymnastics studio in that strip mall, and the parents and the owner of the gymnastics studio, for like kids 8 to 12 or so, were alarmed and upset and felt like, oh no, these violent, mentally ill people are going to come in and scare our kids, and it'll drive down our property values of the owner's studio, and all of that is a myth. People with mental illness are statistically more likely to be victims of crime than perpetrators of it. And so I've testified at a number of planning commission hearings and provide data and facts around clubhouses. And clubhouses add value to the community. They don't detract value. So we get involved with advocacy on a variety of levels. We also have a quality assurance program. Many of you are familiar with JCO, CARF, but Clubhouse International has our own formal accreditation program. So our QA system, if you will, is evaluating fidelity to these 37 standards. It's an evaluation and a peer review of how well a clubhouse complies with these 37 standards, which are divided into 8 different categories. Clubhouse members are highly involved in the process, and when we do an on-site visit, it's typically a 3 to 4 day on-site visit with 2 faculty members. The clubhouse will complete a number of documents in advance of that visit, and then we'll do a preliminary findings meeting while we're on site to give them sort of like, this is what we're seeing, but that'll be followed by a written report with recommendations and suggestions. Our accreditation process is meant not to just be evaluative, but also consultative. Most clubhouses know what they're struggling with. They want the help to get better. So our faculty is equipped with a pretty thick resource manual and training with resources to help clubhouses who may be struggling with their employment program or expanding their board. So each area of the standards, we want to be consultants, not just evaluators. Our accreditation process is conducted by not just staff from clubhouses, but also members. So people with lived experience who attend clubhouses participate in the same training that staff and directors do. They nominate members or staff to become faculty members, and it's a two-step process. They need to fill out a written application and meet certain criteria to pass basically the written application to then be invited to what we've been doing lately is a virtual faculty training over the course of 8 days. So we spread it out when we're doing it online over the course of 2 weeks. And we train folks on how to conduct these evaluations. And so we currently have 127 members and staff from 16 countries and 22 U.S. states that comprise our faculty. Here's where our training centers are at. So there's 5 in the U.S. The largest and the first one in the world is Fountain House in New York City, which some of you may have heard of. The other ones in the U.S. are Gateway House in South Carolina, Alliance House in Salt Lake City, Utah, Independence Center in St. Louis, Missouri, and Genesis Club in Worcester, Massachusetts. The rest are located, as you can see, in Hong Kong. We have 3 in Europe, 1 in Canada, 1 in Australia, and 1 in the Republic of Korea. All 12 training centers follow the same curriculum. We work closely with them on the articles that people read. The main training that people will go to at these training centers is called Comprehensive Clubhouse Training, which is a 2-week immersion training. So members and staff, they'll send a team of 3 or 4 people to go and be at that training center, which is a clubhouse in and of itself, for a period of 2 weeks, where they're immersed into all the operations of the work order day, their employment program. They meet their board of directors. If they're governed by a mental health center, they'll meet with representatives from that agency. And so training is a big deal for people to get and understand this way of working with people, which is different than traditional clinical model. I mentioned our new clubhouse development training a little bit earlier, and so we've had about 100, almost 150 now from 2025 participants participate in this infrastructure training. So this is the training I mentioned when you don't have anything and you're just like, how do we get this thing started in the first place? And this is designed around that. Are we going to be operating as a freestanding operation with the board of directors? Are we going to be umbrellaed under an agency? How are we going to fundraise? Where's the best place in the community to even look for a building? It's all those kind of infrastructure pieces. And we opened up 30 clubhouses in 2024, and you can see the breakdown here. But we feel like we have a pretty good batting average of 80% of groups that come to this training. And like I mentioned, they don't usually come with deep pockets. 80% of those groups go on to start and sustain clubhouses. The 20% that don't, and I've been involved in every single one of these, and there's basically 2 reasons why they don't go on to develop their clubhouse. One is the obvious one you might think of, it's funding. They don't get the money to open up the clubhouse. But the second reason is totally under their own control, and that's that they stop meeting regularly. A key part of this is having a group leader who's going to keep the momentum going, have regularly scheduled meetings We assign a mentor from Clubhouse International to help mentor the group. But the group leader, the internal person who's leading the charge, so to speak, needs to make sure that meetings are happening and people are doing work in between meetings, not just a meeting to make an announcement. But what did you find out? Did you meet with that realtor and check out those buildings? How's it going with that grant application? So there's meaningful work occurring in between the meetings, and that's the second reason is the group leader sort of falls off with scheduling meetings regularly, so it loses momentum. It's one thing for us to talk big about, who we are and what we do, but it's better when other people say good things about your organization. And so, the Fountain House and Clubhouse International partnered on it in this effort where we were acknowledged by the Conrad Hilton Humanitarian. We received this prize in 2014, and we're the only mental health organization to win this prize. It was a $1 million prize to the largest nonprofit organization judged to have made exemplary contributions toward alleviating human suffering, and we're a recipient of that award. We also have been recognized by WHO, the World Health Organization, on their guidance on community mental health services. They have a chapter devoted to the Clubhouse, and in part says clubhouses are built on the belief that every member has potential to recover and lead a personally satisfying life as an integral member of society empowered by their own will and decisions. The Clubhouse model has a strong focus on meaningful activities such as work, education, and training. It promotes a sense of community in which members help themselves and others to achieve their goals. The Lancet Commission out of the UK has also acknowledged the Clubhouse model as an essential component to having a mental health system. Research. You guys are part of this yourselves, being involved with the treatment and advocacy. We have also a research arm that measures the effectiveness of the Clubhouse model. Each Clubhouse completes a document called a CPQ, which stands for the Clubhouse Profile Questionnaire. And that gives us a lot of data. We've had a number of studies done measuring what the Clubhouse does, how it helps people, how it reduces costs. And this in the PowerPoint, which Brooke can share with you afterwards, the University of Southern California created a Clubhouse impact report where they took basically 15 rigorous research studies that were done from 1991 to 2021. They were in longitudinal comparison studies and randomized controlled trials and looking at the effectiveness in a variety of areas. And the studies were 10 in the US, 1 in Canada, and then you see China, South Korea, and France. But what they did was they created like a slide deck. And you can peruse the slide deck to see, okay, what were those studies? What were they looking at? They were in these categories: social functioning, employment, a belief in oneself. So qualitative and quantitative, stigma, physical health, quality of life, psychiatric symptoms, but also in hospitalizations and the cost of care. In our day and age, the big deal on cost effectiveness is something that I have a lot of conversations with people about. So we feel like we can make the case about the Clubhouse model, both on the philanthropic end, about this being a really good, effective rehabilitative service for people with mental illness, but also on the cost-effective end. When you have a clubhouse in your community, you're going to have less emergency room visits. You're going to have not only a decrease in psychiatric hospitalizations, but also a decrease in the amount of days that people stay in a hospital because you have this community of support that's part of the discharge planning, that's helping the person upon discharge with their housing, with getting their meds, all the other important factors when somebody comes out of the hospital. So the research piece is something that is very important in the Clubhouse model, and it says click here to read more information about the impact report. But they did a nice job summarizing studies. If you go to our website, you'll also see links to different research measuring the efficacy of our model. So here's where we're at right now across the globe. There's 380 clubhouses in 32 countries, 37 US states, including DC. And we have about 45 new clubhouse startup groups. So in North America, Canada, and the US, we have 268. In Argentina and South America, we have 2 clubhouses. In Europe, across Sweden, Norway, Denmark, number of European countries, we have 74 clubhouses. And then you see in Australia, in Africa, we have clubhouses there as well. One piece I want to mention before I get into the startup group piece is that I think our model actually works in across so many continents and countries because it treats the human condition. And what I mean by that is, as human beings, whether they have a mental illness or not, people need purpose in their lives. And clubhouses provide meaning and purpose and hope to people who are otherwise often marginalized. So, whether you're in Africa, and there's enormous cultural differences to clubhouses in Pennsylvania or Australia, I think that common theme of meeting that human need of having meaning and purpose, a reason to get up in the morning and have a place to go to and have people who expect you and need you and value your contributions. We often take for granted in the workforce, but that's something that I think is something really great that clubhouses provide for our members. So a few slides, and then let's open it up for questions. Just on if you're thinking about, well, how do you get this thing started in the first place? So we call it a startup group. This is really where you're just gathering a group of people who are committed and want to start a clubhouse in their community. You want to enlist the help from the right people. Well, who are the right people? Those people who are really connected to it themselves, people who have a mental illness, family members, people who are personally motivated to get one of these in their community. You also want to find people who know how public mental health funding works. You want to get people from the legislative political arena. Oftentimes, retired politicians are great people to get on your boards. They still have connections and can be very helpful in providing information about how public funding and working in that arena. You want to get people with expertise in creating a nonprofit organization if you're going to start your clubhouse from scratch and be its own 501(c)(3). You want to get people from the business community, preferably high visibility. We want to work with the employers that everybody respects out in the community. And you want to find people that can help, make introductions, give you access to foundations, businesses that can provide private funding for your clubhouse, and obviously people that are willing and able to help. You want to educate the group about what a clubhouse is. And how do you do that? Well, you can go to our website. If there's an accredited clubhouse in your area that you can drive to, clubhouses are great about providing tours. I think touring a clubhouse is essential 1A as far as giving it your own sniff test, kicking the tires, so to speak, of how does this thing work and what do they do during the day? So get a tour, see the work order day in action, stay for lunch, and then have a Q&A with some of the members and staff, and you'll get a good idea of how an accredited clubhouse operates. We have lots of videos and films. We conduct webinars. If you can attend any conferences or seminars, is another way to get your group educated about what a clubhouse is, because they're going to need to make the case to the larger community about how this operates. So you also want to educate key stakeholders and ask for their help. So other consumer groups, NAMI, MHA, other groups in the community, peer support groups, people from the existing mental health funding stream, mental health professionals, therapists, case managers, hospitals, mental health centers, probation officers, social workers, workforce development people, those kinds of folks you want to educate about what you're trying to do with getting your clubhouse established. Politicians and foundations. Every community has different foundations that could possibly be a funder for your organization. You want to form an organization, so you have to decide which way you're going to go. And there's two ways. You can be your own 501(c)(3), have your own board of directors, and be your own independent organization, or you can operate under the auspices of like a mental health center, and be under their umbrella. There's pros and cons to each, and in our new clubhouse development training, we do a deep dive into all this stuff. But it's up to each group to decide what's the better thing for you. We don't dictate it. I will say that those that are freestanding organizations tend to have larger budgets and more members. But we have in the US, we have over 200 clubhouses, and it's about 60-40, 55-45 that are under the auspices of an agency versus, say, 45% that are we would call freestanding or have their own 501(c)(3). But you got to get a bank account, you got to get your tax exempt status. We can help with information on all that. And you got to get money. No doubt about it. Running a clubhouse, starting a clubhouse is not easy. It's hard work. But you want to find funding from individuals, government funding, foundations, corporations. You really want to have like two buckets of money, both from the public end of it, which might be Medicaid money, a grant from folk rehab, state, county, city contracts, and from the private arena, whether those are individuals, you're doing events, you're writing grants, you're getting support from corporations. So we do a huge presentation on fundraising in the new clubhouse development training. So, really, the possibilities are endless. I just wanted to drop a few seeds about starting a clubhouse. I'd be glad to get on a one-to-one call with anybody on this call to do a deeper dive into that. We run our new clubhouse development training usually twice a year. We've been doing it remotely because of COVID, but we did an in-person one in Fort Wayne, Indiana in December, and had 6 groups in that training. When we do it remotely, we can do more because you can do more online. But feel free to check out our website. We have videos. Find a club. We have a directory. You can find a clubhouse near you, and I guarantee you, no clubhouse is going to say no to giving you a tour. My last slide is just to show you a few other clubhouses. This is Fountain House Stockholm, right downtown in Stockholm, Sweden. Amongst all the big businesses, government offices, is that clubhouse. Habersti Klubi is located in Tallinn in Estonia. And Northern Lights is a small clubhouse in Hancock, Michigan. That's our website at the bottom, and that's my email. I'll also throw it in the chat as well. But with that, I'll stop sharing. And defer to Sarah to open it up for questions and dialogue with you guys. I hope that you have some questions for me.
Hi there, Jack. Thank you so much. That was excellent. And I know that I learned a ton, and it's just really amazing kind of the breadth of the reach of Clubhouse International. So just really exciting stuff. And I know that it's um, super helpful information for our attendees and our audience in general.
We
We
have our
have
standards, Brooke, translated into about 20 different languages. And so if you go to our website, you'll see them in Polish and Norwegian and all kinds of different languages because we're a global organization.
That's amazing. I love kind of the mentality too of, you know, people have cultural differences. When you're international, there are all sorts of um, different ways of living and kind of existing and different social standards, et cetera, but that there is a commonality in that need for connection and community engagement that kind of runs through all of that. So I think that's amazing. There are a handful of questions, and I am going to try to ask them in order, but I apologize to anyone if I do that out of order. Um, we have someone asking if people with mental health conditions are hired into staff positions within the clubhouse.
Sometimes, what we generally recommend though, like say you were the member of the clubhouse, Brooke, and then you were like, hey, I want to be hired as a staff, and you've been a member for a couple years. If there's a nearby clubhouse, we would more recommend that you apply to be hired at that clubhouse because it would be a fresh start for you. You'd be able to maintain your membership at the clubhouse you're at, but it's a difficult role transition too. Going from a member of a clubhouse to a staff at a clubhouse. So it's been done. We don't generally say come to the clubhouse so you too can work at the clubhouse. We want members to have whatever career goals they want to have, whether it's in mental health or not be presumptuous just because you're mental illness, you want to work in the mental health field. So it's been done, but generally we want to help folks get a clean start. And so if there's a clubhouse nearby, we'll help them with their resume prep. We'll help them with interviewing. We do a lot of practice with interviewing with folks because whether you have mental illness or not, that's a scary thing to interview for a job. Everybody gets nervous about it. So I don't know how many times I videotaped, role plays where we'd have the big jumbo video recorder back in the day, and I would role play asking the general questions, and then again, I'll use Jared this time. If Jared was that person, I'd say, Jared, your eye contact, you're kind of looking down a lot, or, you're twiddling your thumbs, or something that was a little bit off-putting. And Jared might say, no, I wasn't. I was great. What are you talking about? And I say, I'll bet you a soda. Like you can make light with it. It doesn't have to be this totally anxiety-producing thing. So let's go watch a tape. And then Jared and I would watch the tape, and then we'd practice more. So that kinds of stuff that we do internally in Clubhouses can help bridge the gap for people's employment goals.
That makes sense. Thank you. I love the yeah, you've got the video. So you're like I saw you twiddling your thumbs, but um so this is I think a really important question with the population that AOT serves. And so someone is asking, have you had experience with individuals who are not on medication and who don't recognize their illness? And I think that that's kind of perhaps in line too with some of the assumptions you were talking about, where people think that clubhouses are only for some type of people versus not others. So I'm curious about that.
The answer is yes. And to the degree, like say somebody's not on any medication and they want to join the clubhouse and they're not in any kind of treatment, if they're doing okay, like generally clubhouses in the US are so much more bureaucratic than they are in Europe. If you're in Europe, you can just walk in a clubhouse, say, hey, I got a mental illness, say, come on in and join. You guys know that is the way it works with any of our stuff. There has to be somebody who makes a referral and all that. So if somebody comes in and says, I have a mental illness and I heard about this place I want to join, we would generally try to get them to see a provider to at least verify that they had a mental illness. If somebody's really disruptive, like say it's obvious that they're cognitively not being able to pay attention, they're disruptive, they're loud, we're going to try to get them some help in that regard before they become a member of a clubhouse. But generally, most members are referred through a provider. We do have homeless people who walk in the door and say, hey, I want to join this place. And then we try to get them connected up. Doesn't mean they have to take medication, doesn't mean that they have to stay with a certain clinical provider, but we do. Clubhouses generally have a gate of trying to get a referral source of somebody to verify that they have a mental illness in order to make them eligible, particularly those that are under an auspice agency. And primarily, too, that's related to your funding. You want to make sure that you're serving the people that you said you're going to serve. For example, if somebody appears to have more of a substance abuse issue than a mental illness, we want to make sure that we're serving who we're being funded to serve. I will say that 30 to 40% of the people that we serve have a co-occurring disorder of a substance abuse issue. So that's common for us to see that. But the answer is yes. You can come in the door and just say, I want this service, and we'll try to get them linked up into the clubhouse, but through at least a pass-through for somebody to verify, a psychiatrist or somebody to verify that they have a mental illness.
Right, and that makes sense. And I think what you said about SUD is that's the same with AOT, is a lot of folks have co-occurring substance use disorders. Um, so I'm hearing that it's more about having some kind of referral and less about whether the person themselves believe that they have a mental illness. It's that there's history.
Yeah, and again, I gosh, I've dealt with this a lot of times. Somebody say, "I don't have mental illness, but I heard that you help people get jobs," and it may be overtly obvious that there's something wrong, there's something that a person may have a mental illness, and say, "Look, we're not judging you on your mental illness. But that's who we help here. We're not going to sit here and spend all day talking about your mental illness or how you cope with your mental illness or what your symptoms are. We're focusing on what you can do, what you want to do, your strengths, talents, and abilities. But before you start here, we do have to at least have somebody verify, since we're not you may have a clinical professional on staff at the clubhouse. I'm an MSW, LSW, and was licensed and all that, but I'm not doing that kind of diagnostic work at the clubhouse. We don't have generally psychiatrists on our staff team. So I would try to nuance that a bit and say, look, you may feel this sucks and people are private. probing into your private life and you don't have a mental illness, but you want to get a job. I'm telling you that I'm bound by we're funded to help people with mental illness. I don't really care that you don't think that you don't have one as far as you coming here and you want to getting help with a job. I want to help you get a job, but help me help you here. I want you to just meet with somebody, talk to them about it. Can we at least make that kind of agreement with each other? So it's sort of like a real conversation. I mean, I've been called every name in the book, by people who, might really need help and say you're an asshole or whatever. But maintaining like this person is reaching out for help. And we want to try to
Right.
honor that help and not get caught up in the name calling or what kind of mental illness they have or what medication they should be on. They're reaching out for help. And so whatever way we can try to make that work and still maintain like especially within an hospice agency, they're going to say we have to verify that somebody has a mental illness. Come in for a 1 hour meeting with somebody here and then they're done. They don't have to
Yeah,
continue on with that.
that makes sense. And I think that that's good and doesn't present uh I think because a lot of people who benefit from AOT have um anosognosia as a symptom where they have a lack of awareness. I think that it's good to hear that there's not those barriers to entry. Um,
That's part two,
kind
Brooke, why we don't have a like we don't have a coping skills class in the clubhouse. I mean, people get mad. Lunch better be ready by noon, or it's going to be some pissed off people. But that's a much more in vivo moment, than us role playing. Okay, Brooke, you're angry about this, and what? Let's role play this out. There's in vivo moments every day at a clubhouse. Xerox machine breaks. You're trying to get the newsletter out. Tire goes out in a van, or somebody didn't clean the bathrooms and somebody's upset about that or whatever. That stuff happens when you have a group of people every day interacting with each other. But those are the moments where we're working with people. And Sarah might need help with budgeting, but you and Jared and 15 other people all live in a care home to just get a $50 allowance a month. You're not really worrying about budgeting. So why have a budgeting class for everybody? And then there's nothing else offered but the budgeting class where Sarah will work one-to-one with her staff worker of her choosing to help her with her budgeting planning. So every member will pick a staff that they want to work with or they feel sort of a connection to help them with their individualized goals.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that just the kind of the examples you gave and imagining this in practice, that it's real life practicing of kind of conflict resolution and the challenges that life presents in what sounds like a really open and accepting environment, which I think um is so important. Um
And that's
so
where the
this
work
is
unit structure comes into play too, because it isn't all kumbaya, like everybody's all best friends.
yeah,
Just like in any work environment, not everybody is all best friends with each other. You might be like, I can't stand that person. Well, in a clubhouse, it's fine for you to really not can't stand another person. The important thing in a clubhouse and a bottom line for a director is to maintain a safe and dignified environment. So there's we don't tolerate violence and there's other ways that we'll talk with people about dealing with the person who pushes their buttons or whatever, but you don't have to be in the same work unit with them. You don't you can choose not to interact with them that much, but you're not allowed to yell and scream at people and treat people disrespectfully. There was a director in a clubhouse in North Carolina when I first started who said, Jack, we got one rule here in our clubhouse, and it's that you can't interfere with other people's rehabilitation. And that's wide ranging, but I kind of like that because it was like, you're walking around slamming your coffee cup down or saying, "Oh, that's a stupid idea." Like if you're kind of being a bully in the clubhouse, that's not cool. And so while you're not being outwardly violent or something, we'll talk about that kind of behavior with an individual because members will vote with their feet. If they don't feel safe and they don't feel like this is a place I feel welcomed, I won't come, and
right.
they'll stop participating.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, kind of, and I think you kind of answered this, but maybe you can parse it out a little more. So someone is asking that it sounds like the clubhouse model is highly dependent on highly motivated members. Is this true?
No, we have people who come and um, some are highly motivated, but some people come and say, I don't know what I want to do. Can I just hang out and just observe the environment? And it would say, yeah, that's cool. No one's forced to work. No one's graded on like, look, if you're not helping out in the kitchen, you can't come here. Members tend to be harder on each other than staff do. Like part of the staff's role is to protect those members that may not want to get involved and are very shy and don't want to they're not answering phones, they're not making lunch, they're not washing the vans, but they feel a part of the community. I'll give you a good example. We had a member named Bob, and he wasn't really into the work unit meetings and volunteering and doing all this, but and at the time I wasn't a director, I was a staff worker, and our director was sort of like, well, Bob may not be a good fit here. And I'm like, should be able to come here. Um, no matter what, it's not about us of making us judging whether he's a good fit or not. We should be as welcoming and opening. So Bob wants to be a part of this. So long story short, that director left. I got promoted to be the director. First person I called because he stopped coming was Bob. And I said, Bob, you want to come back? And he's like, I didn't really feel like welcomed and needed. And I said, Bob, you're not going to be judged about how many dishes you wash or what level of involvement you have. So he comes and he ends up being the MacGyver of the clubhouse. Remember that TV show MacGyver? The guy could fix anything. That was Bob. He fixed bike tires, he fixed the microwave, he fixed the ice machine, anything that broke in the clubhouse. This guy was the handyman. And that was his role. So a long way to answer the question about highly motivated. Bob wasn't motivated to be in the work order day. He wasn't motivated to get a job. He was in his mid 60s and he wasn't looking to go back to school. But he was homeless for a long period of his life and he was angry at the world, kind of that sort of view. And he found his role at the clubhouse. So
Right.
the answer is to whatever degree people want to get involved with it. That means just coming out and having lunch, and not doing any kind of amount of work at the clubhouse. You're not scored or graded on any of that.
That's great. Yeah. It's great that there's kind of that people make it what they want in terms of involvement. Um, so someone is also asking if the group leader is a staff member of the clubhouse.
Typically, the director of the clubhouse, we don't say you have to have a mental illness or not. It's not a prerequisite that somebody has a mental illness to be the director of a clubhouse. I know that a lot of people do. Staff may or may not have a mental illness. The big thing about a good worker is a person who can have a lot of plates spinning. Like say Sarah needs help with a job application. Jared is struggling with uh, an interpersonal relationship. You want some help with applying for school, and I'm running the work unit, and I'm working with all three of you guys, and keeping those things, like Brooke, let's meet at 3 o'clock today, and we'll sit down and do that. Multitaskers is what we look at in Clubhouse. When I used to look at resumes, I would look to see if people had customer service experience, like were they bartenders? Did they work at a hotel or a restaurant? Where they deal with a lot of different personalities and have to be a lot of things to a lot of people. So a sort of a saying in our work is you could tell a good staff worker by how many people are in their orbit. Meaning, like when they're around the clubhouse, there's always members around them. There's people who want to be engaged with them. They're seeing that guy sitting in the corner. They're not giving up on him each day. They're still reaching out to that guy and recognizing him being there. And for some of our members, just getting up in the morning and getting dressed, getting a shower, and coming to the clubhouse is a big step towards their recovery. And so, as equally as the person who wants to get help to get a full-time job, so too with that person who lives in say, a crappy boarding care home and wants to get their own place someday. I don't know
Mm.
whoever decided that people with mental illness want to live in group homes, but most human beings want their own shower and their own bathroom and their own bedroom. And so a big part of our work is helping people get those same things.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And I could see the customer service experience being really helpful in kind of wearing all the hats needed to be in that role. So kind of a similar question about to the first question, which is this is from Jerry, and she says, "Aloha, Jack. And what do clubhouses do to make services accessible to people who don't recognize they have a mental illness because of the symptom of anosognosia? And does the model incorporate any kind of like motivational interviewing techniques or anything like that?
We'll do that like more of on a one-to-one basis. It's tough with that diagnosis because of the obvious thing. There may not be in any kind of service per se. So how do you even find the folks or become aware of them? So clubhouses will do forums, open public forums, and try to reach just the general public. They'll have open houses a couple
Mm,
times a year, and so and different workers change over at agencies. So getting on a regular basis to go out into educate providers in the community. So if we don't know the person, know of the person, then that's tough because where are you going to
right,
find the person, even educate them about the clubhouse? But by and large, it's through those avenues, through existing providers, through publicizing in the local newspaper, on the radio station. Hey, we're this the clubhouse out in the community, and we're having this open house. It's open to anybody in the community who wants to see it. Come on by from 4 to 7 on Friday night. We're going to have a band. We're going to have food. We're going to have a tour so you can see who we are and what we are. Come one, come all. I used to rent bouncies, so I wanted families to bring their kids and just feel like this is a cool place. So we'd have a live band. We had tours running. We had a couple members do testimonials at the end about what it meant to their lives, and we had these big bouncy houses. We had fish ponds for kids. We wanted to make it like a family friendly event, and that was helpful to reach people who otherwise are in the shadows.
right. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think at least for the folks that we're advocating for people who are on assisted outpatient treatment orders, they would be connected to services even if they are not recognizing their illness, which I think it sounds like that would be their avenue in. Um,
Yep.
and
And the other thing that's cool about clubhouses and for people um, with that diagnosis is often there's so many leadership opportunities at the clubhouse.
mm,
So if there's somebody's like, well, I'm not like they're much, they need more help than I do. Well, then help run the work unit, help be on the bureau, help um, with organizing this new advocacy effort that we have. There's a lot of leadership opportunities at clubhouses for members to get involved with. And so if somebody feels like I'm not like them, I'm not as lower functioning, there's a whole ton of areas where folks who feel like I've got a lot of other skills can get involved with. Help write a grant. Help me on, get out in the community and talk about who we are. There's a lot of different opportunities for people who might feel like I don't want to talk about my illness. I don't have an illness. I know I need some help, but I don't want to talk about that. There's different ways for people to. We're not a program where you just sit around and talk about your illness all day.
right, right. And I think especially for folks who are court ordered into treatment, it may have had enough of that.
Well,
For
we're human beings. We're not our illness. You don't talk about somebody with diabetes or cancer. Like you want to get to know them as a person, not by their illness. And so there's a whole person we want to get to know and not be talking just about the side effects of their medication. We certainly will do all that and we attend to all those kinds of needs, but we want to get to know who the person is. Like, so a lot of times people come in the clubhouse and say, I don't think I'm good at hardly anything. And they might see the food service unit say, I remember my grandma had a meatloaf recipe I used to like. And like, we still have the recipe? Bring it in. Let's make your grandma's recipe of meatloaf. And so you're just trying to like generate like some sort of level of interest for somebody who might otherwise not know what they want to do and had not come in with some targeted goal. A lot of folks will just be, I'm bored out of my mind. I don't have anything to do all day. I heard about this place and I don't know what I want to do with my life, but I heard this was a cool place. It's like, hey man, come on in.
yeah, no, definitely. I think so Malcolm is asking in the chat how can a clubhouse be a support for people on an AOT order? And I think before I hand that to you, I'll just give a little bit of information. So I know of a couple instances of people who were on AOT going to Fountain House in New York. But besides that, at least Treatment Advocacy Center isn't super aware of like the inter or colleagues, please jump in if I'm wrong, but I'm not aware of how AOT programs and clubhouses are currently interfacing in various states. And I think that's part of the reason why, you know, we have this webinar and we're hearing from you because there's a lot of, um, I think, overlap in the goals of each, and I know that participating in kind of meaningful um, work and socializing and all of that is so important to recovery and would be of great benefit to a lot of people on AOT, hence the webinar, so people can hear about it. But so I'll add that. But then the question is, yeah, how can clubhouses support people on an AOT order? And so those are going to be people who, depending on their state statute, um, meet a criteria that means, and they may have had a certain number of hospitalizations in a certain time period. Um, they are ordered to participate in mental health treatment. Now, that doesn't mean that they're being necessarily forced into treatment in kind of an aggressive way, but they may have some requirements under the order of needing to attend appointments. They may be asked to take medication, those things. And so how could a clubhouse be supportive for people who are on an AOT order in that situation?
It's a great question, Malcolm. We get it a lot. And the answer is more nuanced because membership is voluntary and time unlimited. It's one of our standards. So how does that square with a court order thing? So it's nuance, and I'll give you a couple of examples. We don't want people being forced to come to the clubhouse, but well-intentioned probation officers, judges, people in your arena, where there is some sort of like you need to be mandated in, you're mandated into medication or treatment or whatever. We would talk to them about the clubhouse being one of options that they choose from. And if the clubhouse is a place they want to come to, we're not going to be the ones like monitoring their medication at the clubhouse. We're not going to be filling out volumes of paperwork for the probation officer. We take daily attendance at the clubhouse. And so if the person signs a release of information for us, they know that you're referring them over. We can provide attendance records, but we're not going to be like saying, Bob completed 3 tests today that meet his thing. Everybody has a goal plan at the clubhouse that they'll sit down with the staff to. So we want to be a part of that team, but we also don't want to be the ones bending their elbow up and saying, you got to come here or we're telling on you kind of a thing. We want it to be an open sort of thing. We have a lot of judges that love us because somebody's off their meds, steals a candy bar from 7-Eleven. They don't need to have that on their record. It's hard enough for a person with a mental illness to get a job, let alone having a criminal record. And so a lot of judges are working with mental health court systems to refer people to clubhouses. So we'll work with a group that wants to do that, but we don't want to be the the guys that are
You're not
monitoring their
enforcing the
medication
order. Yeah.
compliance and that sort of thing. We'll have the person sign a release, verify that they're attending, tell you what they're working on at the clubhouse. But we're not going to strong arm the person with like, you're going to be in real trouble when I narc on you, to the other person. I hope that makes sense. We want to be in that helpful supportive role, not the PO itself. But we've had a number of people who were court ordered to be in some sort of treatment, and then they provide them an array of options, and they say, "Oh, I want to go to the clubhouse. That's a place I want to check out." And then they do. And so our goal is to try to get past them feeling I'm forced and this sucks. I don't want to be here anyways, to being like, hey, I got to do something. You're coming here anyways. Why don't you get involved with something and see if this is something you like? Even if you weren't court ordered, this might be a cool place for you. Try to keep that off our conversation here and just think of what do you like to do? What do you do not want to do? Help us help you with this. Like, you're not going to be court ordered forever. What do you want to do in life? And so
Mm.
that sort of conversation takes place where we try not to be too draconian on the AOT order, but focus on what they want to do in their life. And if they're choosing the clubhouse versus a volunteer job in the community or a workforce development thing or whatever else they have as their options, they're making that choice too.
Definitely. And I can see a lot of space for overlap. Like if if one of if someone's goal in their we want to have people participate in their own treatment and have goals that are connected to that aren't necessarily just the goal of I'm going to take my medication daily. We want goals related to better quality of life. And I think that
Exactly. What it's a means to an end. Medicine, you think it doesn't help. Everybody else has told you for 20 years that you're so much better because it helps you interact with people. It helps you keep a place to live when you don't stop your bipolar medication, you get manic, and then all hell breaks loose. The medication, you guys do this work, we don't use the meds as the anchor. We use like, what is your life like? And who are you like when you're on this medication as opposed to what happens when you don't? And here's the 20 times that you stopped your medicine and you ended up getting in a fight with your mom and dad. You ended up in jail again. Like you don't want to go to jail. You don't want to have a fight with your mom and dad. And this is one thing. It's not the only thing, but let's talk about what you want to do in your life besides living with your mom and dad. What else do you want to do with your life? I hope that
definitely
helps, Malcolm. I have a separate conversation with you on that, but it also depends too on um like a clubhouse may have a little bit more openness, like fountain houses. They're the largest clubhouse in the world. They have 300 members a day, and so they're very broad and expansive and accepting. Some other clubhouses might be a little more of we don't make us the cops in the situation.
makes sense. Yeah. Um, well, I definitely see, I really see how people on AOT could benefit from being members of clubhouses. So, and I think that answers Malcolm's follow-up question, which is that would court order attendance in a clubhouse be appropriate? And it sounds like the answer is definitely no.
Eh, the questions I would ask would be like, well, what else do they have to do? What are the other parts of this? So we don't want a person to necessarily have to do that, but we've had people at the clubhouse I worked at, we had that in there, but I would frame the question more with the person as far as like, look, you're being court ordered to come here. We're saying it's voluntary. It's confusing to you. You don't have to come here. You can go do this, 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 and this. You're choosing to come here. We have to track attendance for our own funding purposes, and report back to this person. So if you find that this place sucks and you don't want to come here, then let's go back to your other options that you have. But this is part of the deal. And so, no, we're not going to, be monitoring each and every one of your activities all day long. That's not our role here, but give it a shot. Give it a shot, and let's, besides the order itself, the order is going to end at some point in your life. And so, what do you want to do with your life? So, some clubhouses will take them. Some are a little bit more like, no, it violates standard one. Membership is voluntary and without
Mm,
time limits. Don't make us be the bad guys on mandating that the person comes here. We're not going to mandate that person. It's a way for you, Malcolm, if there's a clubhouse in your community, to go have that conversation with them about that because it's a nuanced conversation. I get where you're coming from, Malcolm, and I agree with it. And I'm one of those people too. I've gotten yelled at many times because I do believe in the value of medication, and sometimes people need to be on medication despite their wishes. And I get, you know, torched about that here and there, but I've seen it the other way so many times where somebody's quality of life is so horrible, and they're lighting their hair on fire in their apartment trying to light a cigarette above their oven, and they won't get treatment, and they're not only endangering themselves, they're endangering the people that they live around by creating a big fire. You guys have 1,000 stories like that, and so I do think that sometimes that forced nature of medication and stuff is helpful to people, when it's needed, but rarely. And so we want to be a
right.
part of the folks that help.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think, well, first of all, I want to say thank you for staying on too and answering all these questions because we've kind of gotten a slew and and I appreciate your time. So Katie is asking, she says that in California, the clubhouse model is being encouraged by the state to be implemented with some funding support. and some of their mental wellness centers, which I'm not sure what those mental wellness centers are, but have considered transitioning to the Clubhouse model. But it would require them to change their demographic being served and to also and require Medicaid documentation of services for those with SMI. So, any suggestions or encouragement for those entities making this change? Or is it, I guess, would it be better for those existing mental wellness centers to transition, or would it be better to start new? And I guess the background on that is I'm not sure what those mental wellness centers in California are.
I know exactly what this
Okay,
person's talking
okay.
about, and that's why I immediately
Beautiful.
put my email in the chat because I'd be welcome a conversation with you on it because they can do both. What they need to do, number one, is get their county on board with it because the client per se for us is the county. The county needs to basically we've been identified as a center of excellence in California among six other providers, three on the children's side, four on the adult side. So we're being contacted by counties left and right, and they complete a form called an engagement interest form, and we have a consult with them. So if the county gets on board with it, they can access this Medi-Cal funding. And so, again, Medicaid funding comes with its own bureaucracy and hoops, but with that funding that they're contracting with us would include membership in Clubhouse International, pay for accreditation fees, pay for training fees. And so we're having a lot of calls and consults with Lodi was one, which has several mental wellness type places. And I visited one there a couple months ago, and we talked about, look, if you were to convert this, this is what I would do to make this a work order day sort of thing, then do this. And we hired two people in California, one's in San Diego, one's in San Mateo, for this project that are doing a lot of TTA, training and technical assistance. So if you want to email me, I'll give you more information on that particular question. We're knee deep into it now. We're excited to be identified as a center of excellence, and we're hoping to get a lot more clubhouses in California because of this project.
Amazing. Well, I guess kind of a similar question, at least about the county part, from New Mexico. So Monica is asking, or she's saying this is amazing. She's heard amazing things about clubhouses and that maybe it was mentioned, but she missed it. Are there any fees for members? And have there ever been clubhouses run by county governments?
No fees for members. I will say that with a caveat. There's one clubhouse in California that does a sliding fee scale, but if you don't have any money, you don't pay anything. That's one clubhouse in Florida, but by and large, no clubhouses charge any membership fees. Clubhouses raise their money through, public or private entities. We don't want that to be a barrier for membership. Um, Counties, typically there's a provider that the county will engage with to carry, to umbrella the clubhouse. So the county itself, unless they're a BHO provider themselves, they may operate the clubhouse under their umbrella and their array of services. So a lot of clubhouses in the U.S. will have a mental health, a BHO, for example, that has a case management function, a clinic, a clubhouse, an emergency service, a housing component, and a clubhouse is one of those services.
Awesome. Um, that's great. I'm guessing it varies, but someone's asking how many members most clubhouses have.
Usually, on average, most clubhouses might have 30 to 40 members average daily attendance, and then they would have probably about 100, 120 active members. We
Hmm.
define active members as if they come in the clubhouse once every 90 days, but some members are working. Some members need to take three buses to get to the clubhouse, and they might only come a couple days a week. But the ADA, the average daily attendance might be 30 to 40 people. Like Fountain House is huge. We have some clubhouses have 80 to 100 people a day. We have clubhouses as small as having 8 to 10 members a day. So they work in rural areas, they work in urban areas, they work in larger amounts of people and smaller amounts of people. Typically, this ties into your question. People ask us a lot, what's the staff member ratio? Like how many staff do you need to run a clubhouse? And the typical ratio is 1 to 18, 1 to 20, meaning one staff per 18 or one staff per 20 members, because you need to consider the active membership in that ratio. Because just because Brooke may not come into the clubhouse that often and I'm her worker, I'm still calling Brooke. I'm still doing home visits with Brooke or finding out how she's doing, updating whatever goals Brooke is working on. So she's on one of those 20. So you typically a clubhouse usually has 4 to 6 staff with that kind of
Mm,
membership. You don't need a big staff to run the clubhouse because the members get involved in running the overall
right.
operations too. So that's a rule, kind of a number of gauging how many staff you need. Think of a ratio of 1 to 18, 1 to 20, and running a fully functioning clubhouse with an employment program, an evening weekend program, that sort of stuff.
That makes sense. That's great. Well, I'm seeing one more question, but for those of us who, or for those of you all who stayed on uh, past the hour, first of all, thank you, and second of all, last chance for questions. So the last question is, and I think you had this in your presentation, but maybe I could include it in the follow-up materials as well, for folks to check where the closest existing clubhouse is to them. Um, do you know, Jack, if there are any efforts currently to start a clubhouse or an existing clubhouse in Northern Virginia?
Yes, and I'm trying to think of how I'll say this quickly.
No, it's
DMAS.
okay.
So that person from Virginia will know that DMAS is the Medicaid department in Virginia. They contacted us early last year and said, "Hey, we're doing a fact-finding mission. We have about 20 to 30 PSR programs or more, and we've been looking at the efficacy of the Clubhouse model. We're thinking of you guys as possibly converting to you or another PSR program." I had 3 or 4 meetings with them, had them meet with other people on our team. They decided to convert to the Clubhouse model. So since they told us this like in August or September of 2025. So for the last 3, 4 months, I've met with at least 12 to 15 providers and PSR programs that will no longer, come July, I think it is, aren't going to get the Medicaid dollars if they want to run their what they're running now. They have to convert to the clubhouse to get the Medicaid money or get private funding or close their doors. So I've had a bunch of consults with different programs across the state of Virginia. So if you want to email me where you're at exactly, and what the name of the place is, I can tell you if they've contacted us or not. But we've had programs left and right contacting us, and they're in 3 buckets. One bucket is, hey, we heard about the model, we're excited, this is cool, we want to do this. I love those buckets. The second bucket is the ones that just don't know. And they've been told by DMAS they're doing this. So they just want information. Like, what would it take? So a lot of them, I just have them take their phones and walk me through their program. And me and 1 or 2 of our folks from our team will see their space and analyze, like, well, if you're going to do this, is this what you would need to do? And that bucket's fine too. They're just wanting to gather information. The third bucket is the ones feeling like they're being dragged kicking and screaming by DMAS and saying, we like what we do. We want to keep doing it. We don't want to go this route. From our end of it, we're just providing information. DMAS is saying, look, we want to invest in a service that we think is going to help more people. And none of the programs that I talked to are doing any kind of employment. They farm it all out,
Mm.
they refer it all out. So to me, they're going to be helping more people with schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder. When they convert to the clubhouse model, they're going to be helping those folks get out of crappy boarding care homes and get jobs in the community. And I'm in no way, shape, or form devaluing what those PSR programs do now, but we have data that speaks to us being an evidence-based practice, and this is what we do. So I'm excited to work with those programs to convert or start new clubhouses.
That's awesome. Well, I'm hoping that whoever asked that question is in the bucket, the first bucket you talked about, and is looking for a clubhouse in their area or is happy to convert. So one more question from Patty, which is, what should her first step be towards establishing a clubhouse through her NAMI affiliate?
I just had to send a quick note to Jerry Clark. I
No, you're
saw her
good.
message on this. Um, So with our NAMI group, contact me and I can give you information about starting a clubhouse. And you can share that anything that I send to you with the local NAMI affiliate. And I'd be glad to get on a Zoom call with you and just talk more about what we do, how we do it, sort of like this was today, only a shorter version of it. And I'd be glad to talk to your NAMI affiliate. We've had more clubhouses start through NAMI affiliates than any others. We have a great relationship with local NAMI affiliates in many different areas that have started clubhouses. We started our first one last year in Idaho. So Sand Creek, Idaho started from a NAMI branch. Frustrated mom that was pissed off that her son wasn't getting the services that he deserves, and she was the inspiration for getting it going. And so now they came to our new clubhouse development training and they got the money. Now they're open and they've been open for about a year now.
That's great. Yeah, there's in the communities where there are active NAMIs, we find that if they partner with AOT programs there, it can be a really beautiful relationship and their family education piece is incredibly valuable. So that's exciting to hear that
We
there's
love the
also that
tenacity
overlap.
and the resilience of NAMI affiliates. They're not going anywhere. They're in it for all the right reasons. It's totally integrous to what they want to do is help their loved one, and that's who we want. So give me the NAMI family who has no money, no budget, no building, no nothing. Versus like say a mental health center director that just says, "Well, we want to try this. We're thinking about it." I like working with people who are motivated for those kinds of reasons because they're not going away. They're in it for the long haul and they're in it for all the right reasons.
Definitely. Um, Well, this has been amazing. I learned a lot. I know that the folks on the call, if if the Q&A was any indication, have learned a lot too. So thank you so much, Jack, and thank you everybody for joining. If you've been to one of our webinars before, you know that it's going to be a little weird when we sign off because the minute I hit end, the screen is just going to go away and we're all going to be gone. So.
Well,
Um,
thank you for the opportunity, Brooke. We really appreciate it, especially being the first one of the year. Hope you guys it went well, and I can't
no,
see anybody or anything other than you, and so
I know that can be
I
weird too.
yeah, so I hope it was valuable to you. Please feel free to reach out to me with additional questions, but thank you for the opportunity. We really value the work that you guys do as well, and it's been nice to partner with Treatment Advocacy Center and the AOT program specifically. So, uh, mahalo. Thank you in Hawaiian.